Chairman of the Democratic House Ways and Means Committee moments ago asked the IRS for 6 years of your tax returns.
Is that all?
That's all.
Usually it's 10, so I guess they're giving up. Now, we're under audit, despite what people said, and we're working that out. As I'm always under audit, it seems, but I've been under audit for many years because the numbers are big, and I guess when you have a name, you're audited. But until time as I'm not under audit, I would not be inclined to do that. Thank you.
Donald Trump may not be inclined to share his tax returns with Congress or the general public for that matter, but Democrats don't care. House Ways and Means Chairman Richard Neal has filed a formal request with the Treasury Department to obtain Trump's taxes from 2013 to 2018. Writing in a statement, quote, "We have completed the necessary groundwork for a request of this magnitude, and I am certain we are within our legitimate legislative, legal, and oversight rights." And that's how Democrats are approaching this, that it's not within Trump's power to prevent his taxes from being released. Speaker Nancy Pelosi drove home that point today, insisting the law is very clear.
The Secretary shall furnish, shall, not may, should, could, shall furnish such committee with any return or return information specified in such request.
During the conversation, Tim O'Brien, Bloomberg Opinion Executive Editor. If I were Steve Mnuchin, I'd say, yes, Mommy. I mean, she's not messing around, Tim.
She's not messing around. It's good to see them have some spine on this issue. I think it's a nonpartisan, non-ideological issue. U.S. citizens should know the financial conflicts that potentially reside in the Oval Office, and especially with this president. You know, the issues that have floated around him on business relationships that he's continued to maintain even after he went to the White House, foreign influences, you know, featured through either loans or investments in his businesses, all are sitting out there in this sort of dark cloud that no one has a handle on because he hasn't released his tax returns. And when he uses this smokescreen of an audit as a reason for not doing it, let's remember Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was under audit when he turned over his tax returns. Nelson Rockefeller sat on the floor of the Senate for 2 days when he was getting confirmed as vice president, and he had holdings that were much more complex and valuable than anything Donald Trump did. And he put it all out there because there was a sense that if you're part of the public wheel, you owe that to the public. And I think that until he comes clean with this, and until the documents get into the public realm, everyone's at a loss on this.
Let's be clear about something. He's not under audit. I ran a business. I was auditing returns. Audits do not take 3 years. It just because tax returns go year after year. That doesn't happen. He will fight this.
He said 12 years, too. That's the best one.
He will fight this to the Supreme Court. This is, you know, if the eyes are the, you know, let us steer into the soul of somebody, a tax return is the financial soul. And in real estate, more than anything else, and let's go on the premise that he is dishonest as somebody can be, there are so many dishonest things, just the way you value properties, the way you depreciate them. We even saw in his financial statement, he would say the value of a golf club based on 30 cottages, and they were really 20 cottages. And I mean, absolute quantitative lies. You will see tax fraud. The other thing you'll also see, to peek into his soul, the least charitable, wealthy person on the planet. That's what you see in a tax return. His foundation is not his money. Never gave a dime away to anybody of his own personal money, which you don't go to jail for, but you will.
Oh, he's giving his salary away, though.
Yeah, you know, yes.
But, you know, the most
he made that salary. It ain't much. You've seen the taxes, though, right?
Right. He turned the taxes over. He sued me for a biography I wrote of him, and because he sued me for about 3 pages of the book that focused on how much money he had, when we got to the discovery process, we got his bank records and his taxes and his business records. And I think it's pretty clear what he's afraid of coming out in those things. He doesn't. Part of it's his ego. He doesn't want people to know that his business is not as robust as he's always claimed it to be. I don't think that's the scariest thing sitting in front of him. I think that the thing that's the most weighty in his mind and should be in this conversation is, what kind of financial relationships does he have overseas, in Russia, in the Arab world, and in China in particular? And once we know that, what does it say about the policy-making process? Is he compromising policy around sanctions with Russia, or in the Ukraine because of business deals he had or financial relationships that he has that surfaces in those documents? And I think, you know, in the context of everything that's happened with Mueller, it's good to remember that these questions were being asked about him before the Mueller investigation ever surfaced. And they're questions that are going to continue regardless of how the Mueller investigation wraps up, because it goes to the core of who he is.
Not only going to continue, they are the focus of Chairman Adam Schiff of the House Intel Committee.
And of Chairman Elijah Cummings, who has asked for records from auditors that when Donald Trump was trying to purchase the Buffalo Bills. So there are like 3, maybe 4 or 5 prongs of investigation into Donald Trump's finances happening simultaneously. And you have to imagine one of them will produce some sort of documentation. But then again, we sort of know like what's there because, and we forget this, Michael Cohen testified in front of the House Oversight Committee that he committed banking and tax fraud, essentially, that he would...
And insurance fraud.
And insurance fraud.
And ultimate irony, also going back to Hillary Clinton, and Michael Cohen is going to jail for exaggerating the value of a home equity loan.
Right.
Now, you're talking about Trump with hundreds of millions of billions of dollars.
Now,
Talk about the false statements.
Trump is, of course, immunized because he's president, but, you know, we know from testimonials from people who were close to him that this is what he's done. And, yes, it would be nice to have the primary documentation, but we sort of moved on from that Michael Cohen testimony, right? Because things happen so fast and so many different scandals happen that we just have to ingest something new.
Well, we do, but I'm not sure investigators do. And this is another norm that was busted in 2016. I remember when Mitt Romney condemned Trump's refusal to release his taxes. He got away with it, and this is sort of the yarn continuing on.
Right.
I think the interesting part of this story is the fight that's coming, because ultimately this is going to be about statutory construction. This is a very careful...
I was afraid to ask.
That's
the smartest person in the room who's not afraid to say
it's a very strict interpretation of what the law says. And what this committee has done, they have had lawyers look at it, they're ready for court, they are using the plain language of the statute, which says that Congress can, for a public policy reason or oversight reason, request a tax return of anybody. So now let's fast forward. We have this fight in the courts. Mnuchin's going to say no, and there's going to be a lawsuit filed. You get to the Supreme Court. All of these judges who swore they were strict constructionists, right. They are going to not write law. They're only going to interpret the law as written. The law as written is pretty clear. So they're going to be caught in a vice grip where there's going to be an assumption by the conservative base in this country that the Supreme Court will save the day for the president. And if they are true to their oaths, and what they swore in front of the Judiciary Committee, they will have to say, listen, that's what the statute says, turn him over or change the statute.
Let me give you the last word. I mean, does this end up in the Supreme Court?
Oh, I think it'll definitely go to the Supreme Court. I also don't think that 6 years are enough. I think they need to go back about 15 years with him. A lot of cash came into his business in the mid-noughts from sources that are very murky, and I think they would answer a lot of questions about his relationship with Russia, for example. And 6 years isn't going to do it, so I think they need to get more aggressive about the time frame, too.
Well, that's one heck of a tease. Yes. We'll pick this up again, Tim. Thank you so much for coming over. After the break, a new movie that just might prove to be chicken soup for the politically depressed person's soul. That's next.